You mentioned a guy by the name of LeBron James, and I think this will be great for headlining purposes. I think this will be great for clipping a video to discuss this particular player. Some of you may know LeBron James has a son in the class of 2023, and I know you weren't expecting me to ask you about him, but Bronny James, when are we going to see him? What is his status right now? I notice he's kind of floating in that 40 to 60 range in the class, which is pretty doggone good. Like that means you're a 4-star guy and like could maybe even like be a swing 5-star guy if you have a great summer. So like, what's the deal with Bronny? When are we going to see him? And like, what kind of player is he becoming at this point in his development?
I think Bronny is a very good player. I don't think that he is necessarily as dynamic as people want him to be, given, who his dad is. But, I did a fairly deep dive on this coming out of the April recruiting period. And, listen, when you are LeBron James's son, namesake, and you have all of this, you're probably the most scrutinized player, high school player in the country, and you've been that since you were, an underclassman. Everybody wants you to be the second coming of your dad. The reality is he's not that. But historically speaking, I would have to obviously go back and check this, but I'm not sure we've ever seen anybody be that. You know what I mean? Because the pressure that Bronny and, I think about like Michael Jordan's kids and stuff like that. We just saw Scottie Pippen's kid go through his career at Vanderbilt. He's in the NBA Summer League right now with the Lakers. So the pressure that these guys have to face, ironically, he's on the same team as Shaquille O'Neal's kid, is just more than I could ever possibly relate to, because the burden of the expectations is just massive. And that to me is probably the most impressive part about where Bronny is at, is that he plays the right way. He doesn't go out there and play like somebody who's trying to prove anything to anyone. I mean, he's a very good passer. He moves the ball. He's a good defender. He does things that impact winning, and has a maturity about the way that he approaches the game. He's not out there, believe it or not, making a ton of no one is followed by more cameras, and he doesn't play to the cameras, almost ever at all. I mean, again, there's just maturity about him. So here's the breakdown about his game. A big guard, good size, not great size, good size, strong body, has evolved athletically over the course of his high school career, but is not a dynamic creator off the bounce. He's a guy who can play on or off the ball as a combo guard. He's a reliable handler. As I said, very good passer, good feel for the game, good shooter, makes open shots. And so he's a guy that is going to, I don't know that he's going to go to college, but if he did, I think he would impact winning pretty quickly. You'd be able to, think about the kind of guy who usually goes to Villanova, moves the ball, makes open shots, is switchable defensively. That's really what Bronny James is. He's not necessarily the guy who's going to come down, cross you up 3 times and go make the Ja Morant type of play. And I think people want that from him because of his name, but that's not really who he is. And I think a lot of that goes to the maturity in his approach to just be a smart, efficient, winning basketball player, and not worry as much about those highlights or stats even.
Well, he's been in the spotlight for years. And then you think about the type of player that LeBron is, obviously incredibly physically gifted. The iconic highlights of his career will be the chase down blocks, the electric dunks. But at this stage in his career, he's still thriving based on the fact that he's such a high IQ player. So to hear you describe Bronny, I guess it's not all that surprising that you're describing a really high IQ basketball player, because that's what LeBron James is. He's an immensely high IQ basketball player. The one that always flashes back to my mind is that scene from this past season where he's trying to explain something to Austin Reeves, who was a 4-year college player who played under some really good college coaches. And Austin Reeves just cannot process what LeBron is trying to tell him on the court. And I think that's just a perfect GIF size illustration of sort of the high level of IQ that LeBron plays with. So it's not shocking to hear you describe Bronny in those terms.
No, he's smart, but he's also mature. I don't know Bronny personally. But the way in which the thing that impresses me most about him, given the microscope he's been under since he was a freshman in high school, if not before, is the maturity with which he brings to the game. You know, playing within himself, playing winning basketball, not worrying about the individual stuff. That to me is especially as a dad, quite frankly, is very impressive.